Then we look at Psalm 83. And Psalm 83, I first met you, it was when you had your first book out, and I think it was called Israelstein, if I remember correctly. And that was several years ago. So we look at Psalm 83, and we're going to get into that. And there are definitely some detractors from Psalm 83. So this is a great opportunity for you to walk me through.
Okay.
Walk our viewers through, those who are still kind of going, I don't know. In fact, Bill, I had someone who emailed me just recently because of, I can't remember what message I had done. And the person said, it's obvious that so-and-so doesn't agree with Bill Salus on Psalm 83. I'm never going to listen to them again. I'm only going to listen to Bill, is what they said. And I said, well, I don't think this person has studied Psalm 83 yet. Don't write them off. They're actually very good.
Right.
But I found it interesting because I get a lot of different emails and people have different things to say to me. But with that, Psalm 83. Take it away.
Okay, absolutely. Well, first of all, let's talk about the details of the prophecy.
Okay.
I think how it stage sets, and I think we should be watching for it at this point. And then we'll talk about the objections, some of the objections that I've heard through the years. Israelstein came out in 2008. We upgraded that book around 2013, and the Psalm 83 book, The Missing Prophecy Revealed, How Israel Becomes the Next Mighty Superpower. So that actually was the best-selling book I've written so far. But it was an upgrade after the Arab Spring and things that happened in 2011. It dealt with a lot of the objections, which we'll do briefly in this video as well. But Psalm 83, if you want to read verses 2 through 5, would be helpful. And I'll explain the scene while he's turning to Psalm 83, verses 2 through 5. I'll actually read a little more after that. Remember what we just laid out for you in a scenario. We're not saying it's going to happen the way we just laid it out. But you're watching the news and you know it's very possible that all of a sudden Israel is taking hits with missiles coming in, precision guided from the north, chemicals from Syria. Iran's got ballistic missiles flying in, hopefully not with a nuclear warhead. Houthis maybe lobbing drones and ballistic missiles into Israel, Hamas, etc. Israel takes out Damascus, okay? The concern we have here now is that the other countries, the Arab countries around there who are not listed in Ezekiel 38, may at that point say, we need to take Israel. They tried to take Israel out in 1948, and I'll tell you why that wasn't fulfilled at that time. The very countries you're going to learn about right now, they were involved in the War of Independence in 1948 when Israel became a nation. They fought again Egypt, Syria, and Jordan in 1967, and Egypt and Syria in 1973. Jordan kind of got sucked into that one unvolitionally, involuntarily. But so they've been Israel's enemies. None of the Ezekiel 38 populations you'll be seeing in this video have ever really been Israel's notorious enemies. And none of them share common borders with Israel. But these are the enemies that have always been harbored the ancient hatred of Israel. So go ahead and read what they want to do in their confession.
Okay, starting with which verse?
Go ahead and read verse 2 probably.
For behold, your enemies make a tumult. Those who hate you have lifted up their head. That's just verse 2 alone. You want me to continue?
Yeah, keep going.
They have taken crafty counsel together against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you, against God. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, Philistia, with the inhabitants of Tyre, Assyria also has joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot.
We can cut it right there. Okay, so I'm glad you read those names, the ancient names, because we've talked a little bit about those ancient names. Ammon, Moab, Assyria, things like that. Again, not listed in Ezekiel 38, but they happen to all be listed here. Now, what we have here is, it appears to be a group of contemporary nations confederating with a crafty counsel, a devious plan to come against Israel, to destroy the nation of Israel and wipe the name of Israel off the map. In other words, just take it out of the Abrahamic covenant altogether, right? That's what their plan is. Now, some people would say, let's go ahead and then you listed who they are. We'll show a map of who those countries are and their modern day equivalents. Because back then he had Edomites and Ammonites and gigabytes and megabytes, but now we got Jordanians and Hezbollah and things like that. So we'll get into that. But for one of the first objections you get is, well, this is just a prayer. a prayer of lament and precatory prayer. And I think it is a prayer of lament. But Asaph was also a prophet. He wrote 12 different psalms. We're told in 2 Chronicles 29:30, 2 Chronicles 29:30, here's the reading. Moreover, King Hezekiah and the leaders commanded the Levites to sing praise to the Lord, and the words of David and of Asaph the seer. We're told in 1 Chronicles 25:2, the sons of Asaph were under the direction of Asaph, who prophesied according to the order of the king. So Asaph was a seer, a prophet, and Psalm 83 and Psalm 50 are his two most prophetic psalms. So he was a prophet. Now, also another objection is, that these enemies of Israel are just a list of some of the enemies. No, Israel had more than enemies in this. This is not a chronological ordering of Israel's enemies throughout time. This is a contemporary list of countries that are confederating. They came against Israel in 1948. So that's one of the other arguments. But let's put a map on who these countries are so we can show the viewers. You see that they form an inner circle of countries that share common borders with Israel. You've got Tyre to the north, which would be, I talked about the inhabitants of Tyre, that's where Hezbollah are. You have Assyria, helps the children of Lot. The children of Lot were Moab and Ammon. We talked about them in the Jeremiah prophecy. Those would be northern and central Jordan. Assyria, at the time Asaph wrote, encompassed northern and Syria and northern Iraq. Not necessarily Damascus. Damascus may not be part of this prophecy. It may be a segue into it. Then you have, it talks about the Ishmaelites. Would you say that would be Saudi Arabia? The Hagarenes could likely be, because Hagar was a matriarch of Egypt. It could be the Egyptians. I believe it is. It gets into Philistia. That would be where the Hamas are. So I think you've got all these countries, a lot of them are Iran's proxies right now, and terrorist populations within them, that are surrounding Israel, that at some point will make a final shot to try to kill them, take them out. I want to just go through the objections to Psalm 83 real quick, because I think it's important. We said Asaph was a prophet. This was a contemporary confederacy, not a chronological list of Israel's enemies. These are Israel's notorious historical foes that harbored an ancient hatred. The motive of the confederacy is they want to destroy Israel. That's a real motive, not just some prayer. It was not fulfilled in the modern-day wars of 1948, 1967, and 1973, and I'll tell you why. We can figure that out in just a moment. Some people believe it was fulfilled in 1948, but my question for those who think that, what would that mean? There was two big prophecies fulfilled in 1948, correct, Tom? The rebirth of the nation of Israel. A lot of people caught that, but no one was talking about Psalm 83, which is a major prophecy, until my Israel book came out. And then all of a sudden people started, now they're saying, oh no, that must have been fulfilled. Well, how did no one catch that for 70 years, or how many years, if that's one thing. And there's over 150 peripheral prophecies. I'll flash the screen up here. Like we talked about, Jeremiah 49, Zephaniah 2, these other things, Ezekiel 25. There's all kinds of prophecies. Zechariah 12 we just talked about. Well, these things probably all fit somewhere, and they probably fit here. But the thing is, when we talk about, you read Psalm 83, 1 through 8. Why don't you read you're not there, but if you want to get there, it's important to read verses 9 through 12, because the reason it wasn't fulfilled yet is because these verses have not been fulfilled yet.
Verses 9 through 12. Psalm 83, deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera, as with Jabin at the brook Kishon, who perished at Endor, who became as refuse on the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb, yes, all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for a possession.
Right.
Wow.
So what Asaph is petitioning the Lord to do takes our attention back to Judges chapters 4 through 8, dealing with Jabin and Sisera and Zebah and Zalmunna and these guys. So what you have basically in Judges chapters 4 and 5, you had the Canaanites who oppressed the Jews for 20 years. Jabin was the king, Sisera was his general. So Deborah at the time, prophetess Deborah gets Barak, her general, and they go and they destroy the Canaanites, they kill Jabin and take out Sisera, and the Canaanites never oppressed the Jews again, the key thing. So they took out the leaders, of course the armies as well, fully never oppressed Israel again. Then you get into Judges 6 through 8 when he talks about the Midianites. They oppressed the Jews for 7 years. And their kings and princes, Zebah and Zalmunna were kings, Oreb and Zeb were princes. They had 120,000 Midianites were taken out by Gideon and his 300-man army. He took out the infantry. He took out the princes. His men killed the princes of Urban. He killed Zebun Zalmunna. Gideon did. They had the help of the tribe of Ephraim. But never again did the Midianites, from top to bottom, took out their infantries, their leaders. Same with Canaan. Never again oppressed Israel. And they also wanted to take for themselves the pastures of God for possession, which is a thing of Psalm 83. So that hasn't happened yet. These countries are still oppressing Israel. They got some fragile peace treaties, but, Hezbollah is aiming missiles at them right now. So I mean, the point is that I don't believe we can say that's entirely been fulfilled yet. It may have partially been fulfilled in 1948, but this has not happened yet.